The following program contains views that are not those of WVTC, iNetworks Communications, their subsidiaries, affiliates, or financial supporters.
Well, hello there, family. Welcome to You Plant, We Water. And as I always say, on this corner of the world, we are focused on thinking about our faith, mental health, and how can we have healthy, thriving relationships. I'm your girl, Dr. Toya Flowers, licensed professional counselor with a specialization in couples and family counseling, as well as a professor of counseling. And my lovely co-host.
Hi, I'm Trisha Flowers. I'm a minister and a lifestyle coach, and we are so happy to have you.
Welcome back. So if you have been joining us each week, you know we pick different topics and sometimes we process different scenarios or advice that people are wanting from our viewers. And so we're going to do something similar today, but we're actually going to spark our conversation from something we witnessed while we were traveling to what's it called? The Big Apple. We were we're coming from New York in the airport, and we saw an interesting family dynamic. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you our topic for today, and then we'll say a little bit about what we observed. So this week or today's topic is about in-laws, right? How do you engage with and have relationship, or what those relationships can look like with our All right. And part of why we're talking about it is we know Mother's Day is coming up, and that is definitely probably going to be a time where people are going to be with their mother-in-laws or mothers in love, however you want to call it. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about that. Should I set the scene of what we saw, or would you like to, Trish?
Oh, no, you go right on ahead.
And I will. So here's the scene. We're in the airport. Everybody's, that time where you got to wait for the flight. So everyone's there just kind of sitting around waiting. And we see a family. They were, what would I say, probably Muslim or Arabic or something like that, because the wife was covered. And I don't remember if the mother-in-law was covered as well.
She was.
She was. Okay. So the women were covered. There was the husband, 2 young sons, his mom, and the wife. So what we observed was the children, for the most part, were incredibly well behaved. And I'm talking about they were like 4 and 2. So to just be sitting in an airport, they were excellently behaved. And it was clear that it was the mom's responsibility, the wife, to make sure they were well behaved. But we could see, even from a distance, just looking from the outside, her mother-in-law was on her case, just constantly critiquing, criticizing, unhappy, frowned up, talking to her son about his wife, just kind of like, the whole time. And the wife was just kind of like, head down, staying with the kids. She wasn't sitting with the mom or the son. They were sitting together. She was sitting off to the side with the kids. And when they got on the plane, same situation. The son and his mom, they sat together, and the wife sat with the 2 kids across the aisle. And Mama was on her still, just kind of looking, even though when I tell you these kids, because I think they were sitting behind us.
They
They were
were.
directly behind us. These kids were great. They didn't say a word. Anything you want to add?
So the only thing which would happen, right? This is probably their first flight, or they're at least not well traveled, the children, right? So they were crying, and the look of disgust that came across the mother's face. And I'm like, we are grown-ups, and my ears were popping, and I felt all kind of different sensations.
Yeah.
And it was the look of like, you get them to be quiet. And I'm trying to figure out, how was she supposed to do that when flights are uncomfortable, and they were so small that
Very
of
young.
course they would cry. And it was more so the
The
littlest one.
littlest one.
And I don't even think he was 2. He might have been like 1,
was
like he
very
was very
little.
small. And the look of disgust that came across the mom's face made us think, how can we help save her from the ridicule of the mom? And let's just say this, there were no spoken words. It was just the nonverbal that you could tell, like, I wouldn't want to be her.
Yeah, right. And they were talking, but they were talking like another language or
Yes.
whatever. But you could tell because the mom would say something to the son, blah, 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 and then he why? But when I say kid, because even with the ear pop, that little boy did not cry long. I have seen I went on a girls trip a few weeks before that, and I saw a 50-year-old woman complain longer than that baby did. Rightfully so, for my friend that's watching. But I'm just saying, these kids were really well behaved.
They were.
And just watching the dynamic was sad because it almost seemed like almost abusive. Like it was almost so it was just a sad dynamic. Now, having said that, I would be remiss and I wouldn't be a counselor if I didn't talk about different cultures. And in Muslim and Arabic cultures, it can be that way. It very much is the mom, the mother-in-law, is in charge. She is the matriarch, right, of the household, and the wife or daughter can be what we consider, I'm using a strong word here, so don't write me, but like second-class citizen in their own household because they have to fall under that mother-in-law. And so while we were like feeling for her, it's probably not an uncommon dynamic is what I'm saying. So when families come in for counseling, we have to be mindful of that and honor their culture, which is why, if I were counseling them, I couldn't say, girl, you better tell your mother-in-law to fall back. I would never, right? I would just talk about it a little bit, talk to the mother-in-law. What is it that's dissatisfying you? Okay. What is it you'd love to see your daughter-in-law do that would make you feel like she was respecting the family? See, very different. Having said that, let's talk about it. In-law. We'll talk from the petty, professional, and the prophetic. What are your thoughts just as far as the young lady, the young mom we saw in the airport? And then maybe we'll talk about a similar not real life, that was real life, a similar example.
I felt like in that moment, I wanted to save her.
Yeah.
And there was no way for me to actually do that. But I did say a prayer because we know prayer changes things. And I will say that even in that flight, she did ease up a little bit, but I don't know if that was because her ears were popping too. I'm not really quite sure. But for that moment, I really just wanted to rescue her and just give her the encouragement, because we know as moms, it's hard. And to be traveling with 2 under 4 is really challenging. So I just really wanted to let her know, like, you're doing an amazing job. But I also, because of what Dr. Toya was saying, I also didn't want to offend anyone. So we can't just intercede and say things to people, because that wouldn't have been, and it might have got her in more trouble, honestly. I don't know.
Yeah, it might have. My stance from the petty point is pretty similar. What I wanted to do was to openly compliment the mom about how well behaved her children were in front of her mother-in-law. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to say, oh my gosh, your kids are so well behaved. They're the most well behaved children in this airport. And I'm a professional, right? I wanted to give her that shine, which probably would have been petty, and I'm glad I didn't. But what I could have done, if I was thinking about culturally, I could have complimented her and the mother-in-law, which would have been more in line with their culture. I could have said, Hi, I've been watching you and your daughter-in-law, and boy, those boys are so well behaved. Kudos to you both. Right.
That would have been amazing.
Yeah. But in
It might
true
not have
petty,
backfired.
no, it probably would work. But in true petty fashion, I did nothing.
And sometimes that's the way you should do it. That makes a lot of sense.
I'm going to bring another example, and then we'll just hit, because we can talk about them both and go from the, talk more about professional and all that. So this came from one of our viewers, which is very similar. Reaching out because I'm having a really tough time with my mother-in-law. She's always been a bit opinionated and critical, but lately it's gotten to the point where I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around her. Every time we visit, she finds a way to comment on something I'm doing wrong, whether it's how I'm raising our kids, how I'm cooking dinner, or even how I'm decorating our home. My husband always tries to brush it off and tell me to just ignore her, but it's hard for me to do that when it feels like she's constantly undermining me. I've tried talking to my husband about it, but he just says she's old-fashioned and doesn't mean any harm. But the truth is, it's really hurting me and making me feel like I'm not good enough. I'm starting to feel like I'm stuck in this situation and don't know how to get out of it without creating tension for our family. Can you talk to me or share some tips on how to get some boundaries with my mother-in-law?
So I'm going to uncross my legs because this is a lot. So first, I would definitely go into prayer before you even communicate with the husband or your mother-in-law, right?
Prophetic.
And I would make sure that we go in there, because there are times where you may not be able to reach someone on a natural level, but God can, and he'll give you the wisdom and the words, the encouragement to be able to speak. Because sometimes if we're not careful, even in approaching, if you know that this is like not just something that you like, this is an ongoing situation, you want to go in there armored up, right, with the word to protect yourself, because people have the ability to take something that you thought was an issue, and it can backfire, and it can create more havoc on your situation. So I would definitely go into prayer about it first.
Yeah, that's good. I love that, right? And I would say on a professional piece, what I would advise is for you to, again, speak to your husband. It's important that he intercede between you and the mother-in-law. So far, he hasn't, but that is the best approach. If he will say something, it is important as couples, when it comes to dealing with any type of in-law or extended family dynamic, to be on the same team. You as a couple need to be on the same team. And so even though he doesn't seem to see it as an issue, even if he would just say on your behalf, I get it, blah, blah, blah. But my wife, she takes it serious, some of the things you're saying. And so she's wanting to talk to you about it, right? Like, I would love to see him be a buffer first. But I love the prophetic with the prayer, because who knows, maybe there could be a change of heart. You don't even have to do any of this.
That also reminds me, like, equally yoked, right? So that's the other thing. You want to go in as your immediate family or your nuclear family and be able to have that front. And if you're not getting that, it makes it really challenging, because now it's like a confrontation. So that buffer is vital in communicating.
Right. And sometimes we are dealing truthfully with all kind of dynamics when it comes to in-laws. Sometimes it's unintentional, right? They just might be a family that jokes like that. Sometimes it's very intentional. Sometimes there are mothers who, they don't want to lose their son to the wife, right? And this could go for fathers. We're using this mother-in-law example because we've seen it. But sometimes that son has been the man of the house, and your mother-in-law may not be feeling you for that very reason. Other times, right, it could also be where this is how she was treated by her mother-in-law, right? And so she's like, hey, that's how you think you got it bad. X, Y, and Z happened to me. So in a counseling, it would be great if it's not something you all can resolve talking, coming in for family counseling would be great, because we would look at those dynamics, the generational pieces. Like, what was it like for your mother-in-law? What are her thoughts and feelings about, you as a daughter-in-law? What you do want to keep, you do want to have a boundary around your child, your raising of your own children, right? That's something we disrupt in counseling. We will get in there right away. We call it hierarchies, and we would get your mother-in-law out of the parental hierarchy and back into the grandparent hierarchy, because that could be very destructive, not only to the kids, but for your relationship. So yeah, those are some thoughts. Anything on the go for it.
So I do want to ask this. So their hierarchy is parents, then grandparents. There shouldn't really, unless the grandparent is raising the child.
Right.
Okay.
That's different. But so the hierarchy isn't parents and grandparents. The hierarchy, and I use hierarchy to try to describe it, but what it's called is I forgot the word. It's basically a system.
Okay.
But here's how it goes. The grandparents are at the top, but it's by age because they're the oldest, then the parents, then the children. And the reason the parents are right above the children is because they're the ones responsible for the children. So the grandparents should not jump down to the parent level, if that makes sense. So it doesn't mean that what the grandparent says trumps what the parents say as it relates to the kids. It's just like, if you think of like a triangle with layers, the grandparents are there, the parents, and the kids. And so whomever you're closest to is who you are kind of directly responsible for. Even though the grandparents, you're not really responsible for your adult children anymore. But this is very common to see that skipping around. And we also, in counseling, we talk a lot about coalitions and alliances. Sometimes a grandparent will form an alliance with the kids against a parent. And so it's very common. And so that is something in counseling, we break that up right away, right? Like, and it's not like I can't just say it. And, that's the thing with counseling. You can't just say it in the 10 minutes that I just told you. This would take like 5 or 6 sessions, because I have to be very gentle with everybody, with the mother-in-law. I'm sure she has great intentions. I have to imagine what it's like to be her and find out what is her hopes for her. What is it that she wants to see? And then how do we frame that in a different light? Yada, yada. But ultimately the goal is, G-Ma, get out of there. Get out of there.
That makes sense. Thank you for giving more detail, because I'm like, wait a minute. Okay.
No, that was a great question. Good question. Yeah. So, and then I'm just thinking there are so many different dynamics. It doesn't even have to be, we talked about 2 with mother-in-laws, but there's so many things when it comes to extended family. We were just, briefly chatting, and there's so many things. There's things like how supportive is the extended family, right? Do they come out and support, I don't know, children's games or theater performances, or are they more gift giving types? How do you work that? Because you're both coming as a couple from 2 different backgrounds, and you're trying to merge it. And so sometimes it's oil and water, sometimes it's smooth, right? But there's so many different dynamics. I can't even remember some of the other ones we talked about that could be at play.
Well, and I think one of the things that we were talking about, this is a real example from my situation. It wasn't an in-law, but I was dating. And this is how come I didn't get to the in-law part. We were talking and we were getting to know each other, and the family was very involved in our relationship, because I think I was like the first serious relationship for that family. And one of the things that stood out to me was when I was talking to the guy at that time, the sister told me that she would discipline our children and she'd give them spankings. And I'm like, we don't have any, there's no children in sight. And I'm like, wait a minute. Whoa, hold your horses. Why are we saying this? And she's like, well, I'm just saying, because if I'm the aunt, then I should be able to spank him. And in my mind, I'm like, you're not going to have them to be spanking, or, we don't even have to cross that. But that was one of the reasons why I was not able to go into that family, because that extreme where you thought that and again, I didn't even have kids at the time, but the point that you thought you were going to be doing spankings and whoopings and there was no children involved. Why are we going there?
Yeah. And let's see. Okay. How can it affect the attitude of the children? That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So what we'll see when there is, and to the other comment, that power struggle between grandparents and parents, it definitely affects the children, just like when there's a power struggle between the two parents. And what happens is the kids learn how to play the two against each other. So things like, especially when you live in the same household, right? Sometimes you have the grandparent that lives in the house, but kids will do things like, can I go outside? Dad says no. They go to grandma. Can I go outside? Grandma says yep. And then that's why I told him no. And grandma, she's still dad's mother, so she can throw that card. Well, I don't know. And so the kids now know, I don't have to respect my father, right? Because I always have grandma. So it can certainly play out that way. However, having said that, most of the time when a family is operating and thriving in a healthy way, having a multi-generational household is a huge benefit to the children. It's like growing up with a village. It could be really great, but you do have to make sure, everything's operating in decency and order.
So I love that. So you need to make sure you have your rules and your boundaries in place so that there isn't room for the children, because let's be honest, kids, we were kids. We do a little manipulating from time to time.
Yeah. I did. I'm like, who to ask?
I'm gonna find the weakest link. So it's like, you exactly. You're it. There we go. So we know how to create that trauma and that drama to get what we want. And it can be vital to your marriage, right? So if the kid is in there doing things, or the grandparent, whoever, anybody is not on the same accord, goes back to prophetic, it's going to be a mess.
Yeah. So definitely want to try to come together. And these are great things to talk about before you get married, right? Talk about how is it going to work with your in-laws? How do you do holidays? Do we visit your family than my family? Do we alternate, right? Have these conversations beforehand, because the more you do, the better. And then you can go, how do we communicate when we're ready to go, right? Because that could be really tricky when you're with your partner's family and they having the time and they're so happy to all be together. And you're like, I'm tapping out. I'm tired. I'm ready to go, but I don't want to be rude. So what do? Do you have a little signal? Like, so they can say, oh, now we're going to go. But all these little things, these are great conversations to have up front. What are some of the expectations of your in-laws? Like what does your mother-in-law expect of you as a new wife, or father-in-law as a new husband, or vice versa?
And I also like to say, this is something that we were talking about when we were getting our topic together. In healthy relationships, it's not, because we're going a little toxic, but in healthy relationships, it won't really be that dynamic. It'll be a happiness that we're receiving your new gift, because even in our family, right? There's never really a place where we're like, oh, what is that person doing? We're like, oh my God, that person's going to be amazing at that, because I hated it anyway. I hated planning events. And so if you can do that, that is a welcome skill, where it's not a competition, or like, for me, I'm her sister, I wouldn't feel like, well, your mate is now trying to, no, I'm like, well, good riddance, you do it. You know where the mechanic is at? Love that for us. Thank you for your research. We appreciate that. And so that's the thing in healthy relationships. It's not so much a power struggle. There's no real threat, because it's like, I'm secure in the fact that I'm the younger sister. And so I always come to her with ridiculous things, and she kind of tells me nicely, no, like, I don't think we should do that. I'm like, oh, okay, that felt good to me.
Well, I go to her too. Thank goodness she's an adult now. She gives me some good advice too. But having said that, I agree. And so I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of families, this isn't going to really even be an issue. And if you have a great relationship with your in-laws, that's beautiful, right? It's a wonderful thing. And oftentimes it's usually, if there's tension or power struggles or something like that, there's something underneath that's the bigger issue, right? So if you are struggling with that, I would love to let you know that it may not be you, right? It may not have anything to do with you. You might have been able to plug any person into that family, and the same types of things would have come up. Only reason I say may not, because some of y'all, it might be you. You might be going in there doing too much. I don't know. We'd have to see the situation.
Absolutely.
But again, have the conversations. It's good to talk about and manage expectations, and then so that you can go in to all of your holiday extended family events united as a family unit and really enjoy just having all of those people to love on you, love on your children, because family is everything, right?
It is. And that's the thing that we're hoping that we are reaching you guys at a soul level, right? Because we want to give you the tools to be able to communicate with your family. Like she said, Mother's Day is coming up. It's extremely loaded for some people. Some people may not have their natural mother and they may have their mother-in-law, and or just a lot of different ways that this can be stressful. And I love when you said, how do you guys split the holidays? And having a code before we get here, because we don't want our in-laws to see us cutting up with their son or their daughter and we're giving the evil eye. We could have just had that proven point before we got here, we would be in a much better place. And so even for me, I have to work on that because we don't really have a code thing. It's just like,
and for some people, it may not even be necessary because maybe how much time you spend isn't an issue, right? Like maybe it's at your house, who knows? But the thing, to your point, and my point, is to talk about it. And if there is something that over time you realize, I'm really not sure I like that, talk to each other first. Right? That's a bit, I would say from my experience, most of the issues that come up with in-laws that show up in counseling, it is around kids, right? Disagreement about either how much time is spent with the kids, how the kids are disciplined, how to be, like it usually is something in there, or it's this idea that the significant other took the other one away from the family, like they took you away. But as the Bible says, leave and cleave, right? You're starting a family unit of your own, and so keep that central, and then have those boundaries. And boundaries are really important because you also shouldn't be like, when I said some of y'all might be wrong, like if you go into your mother talking about your spouse, well, of course she's gonna be like, when she come around, right? So it's all of these things are things you want to think about. Because don't they say when you get married, you're not just marrying the person, you're marrying their family too.
And that's something that when you're dating or you're getting to know someone, you want to really know their family too, because you can also learn things about how they communicate with each other. So you may come from a very not sheltered, but there may not be, we're comical, right? You can probably pick that up from our conversation. We laugh a lot. We do things that may at sometimes be inappropriate, and we may end up making you be part of the joke, but it's out of love, right? And that might not be what you're used to. And so that's something that we would have to be sensitive like that. When you said that such and such had a big head, they really took that to heart, and now they're looking at their head. And we were just saying something funny. And
That's true.
You just never know. Like, you have to be sensitive to other people, and don't change yourself, but just be mindful, like, hey, they are not used to that. Or even with our communication, sometimes we talk a lot. So that might be a lot for someone. And we're looking at you like, no, what's your answer? And they're like, I don't even know what's going on here. So just be mindful.
Well said. That was a real life example. I remember, because I'm thanks to our own mom for her comment. Thanks, Mom. It is. But yeah, that was a great example because we will talk about each other in my family, like crack jokes. And I have let people know before they come over, like, listen, don't be alarmed. They're going to talk about me a little bit. It's all in fun. They might talk about you. All in fun. All right. So hopefully that helps. And there's so much we could explore because we just really talked about that parental, adult parent, adult child. Really, we didn't even get into the siblings and all of that. So there's a lot that we could explore. So maybe we'll revisit this topic again, if not next week, at some other time.
And if you have a particular topic that you need help with, please write in and let us know so that we can help you figure it out. Now, we don't know if our advice is really helpful for you, but we're hoping that it is.
Nothing else is entertaining. So again, thank you. A couple of brief announcements on our way out. please visit our Facebook page, You Plant, We Water. The Faith Over Fear 90-day challenge will be launching at the beginning of next month. So I'm getting all those materials together, and I've been doing it myself, and you've been doing it a little bit too,
Yep.
Trish, already, and it is working. So we can't wait to join with you and iron sharpen iron in that way. We'd like to thank our executive producer, Bishop Lloyd Kohler Jr., pastor of Mission Covenant Church and
we would also like to invite you guys over because we have a rental space that you guys can do anything. You can do game night. You can have a book club, anything that's nice, wholesome, and fun. We're looking for it. And again, we have a Facebook call. I'm sorry, not a Facebook call, a Facebook page, Mission Covenant Event Spaces. Come on over there and check us out. We look forward to having you guys, and we just really appreciate you.
And last but not least, please stay tuned for information regarding the upcoming retreat, the first of many to come. Thank you once again. And as always, you plant, we water. See ya.
Go to your Apple or Google Play Store and download the WVTC Gospel Radio app today. You can also say, Alexa, play WVTC Radio Skills.
Would you like to play WVTC Radio Network?
Absolutely. Download it today.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ, WVTC Allsip Chicago, and iNetworks Communication Station.